Hey there, good evening. Welcome to this video presentation on Alfredo Cuarons' Roma. So, this film is dedicated to its source material. Every detail of the movie is finely tuned, and every aspect of the story is based on true events. On a surface level, the movie appears to be simply about a normal life. The dialogue is casual, the characters are in and out of the camera, and the interactions between our protagonists and their family are mostly routine and mundane. So, what is the powerful message of this glimpse into the past? Roma is a film about awareness. As the audience gets to glimpse a past but not entirely alien Mexico, it gains a new consciousness of its own class and gender environments, as mirrored by the ones we get to see in this film. Now, before we discuss some of the specific narrative elements that Cuarón uses to tell his story, we have to discuss how he frames it. Um, Cuarón uses a mixture of unique camera angles, sound design, and set design to achieve his goal of framing his film as a memory for the purpose of using hindsight as a device to prompt reflection in his audience. And it is so prominent that it needs its own section for discussion before we can really talk about the rest of the elements that are in this film. So, in an interview at the 56th New York Film Festival, Cuarón emphasizes his goal of setting the film in the tense of being a memory, not merely a view of the past. Memory was the tool of research for this film. I'm quoting here. It was about reproducing or recovering those spaces, casting doppelgangers to the original people. The process of making this film was never an intellectual process. It was gathering from my memory and my endless conversations with Lebo, who was the person Cleo in the movie is based off of. Cuarón deliberately wanted this movie to be seen and felt as a memory, and while making it, chose not to engineer or manufacture beyond what he remembered. Now, one of the specific tactics he uses approaching this is his approach to sound design. Oh, that's not the sound design slide. Sound design. In the same interview, he emphasized that the aspect of visuals is only a part of memory, that sound is a crucial part of the experience of the past. He moves beyond sound as symbolism, such as church bells in one scene. He uses it to create past environments. A specific scene in the film, which we will return to, and it's one that you're looking at right now, is just after Cleo leaves the theater after being ditched by her boyfriend. I want to draw your attention to some of the really key details in this. So I have a second monitor. You see, there's the vendors, there's the crowd, this vendors sport their goods. They yell for potential customers. There's the chaotic noise of a crowd while the faint bustle of the street behind the camera is present. It's an incessant noise, and it's exactly what it wants to be, creating an atmosphere that is strikingly recognizable for anyone like me who has been in a similar environment, and tastefully unique for anyone who hasn't. This method of creating an ultra realistic scene to invoke specific mixed feelings of nostalgia and recognition is repeated throughout this film. Now, another method is in his set design and casting. I guess the wide shot one's coming later. Uh, Everything is as close as possible to the place the film is based on. So in this shot, you see the street where Cuarón grew up. He specifically mentions that the cars were parked where he felt they should be, the neighbors looked like his own neighbors, and their costumes were as close as possible to the past, like I mentioned in that quote earlier. It's no coincidence that the family Cleo serves shares their last name with the director, Cuarón. The father drives the same car, and the set house in the film is just across the street from Cuarón's original house, and they only didn't use the original because it was too far removed from what it was in the past. Now, move this down. Now, finally, this is my favorite one. According to a 2021 article by Rene Idrovo, Cuarón uses the audiovisual style of immersive continuity in his film, which is based on long takes and wide shots that enhance our sensation of presence in the narrative world. I quoted that. Now, this really emphasizes to me how much we're supposed to experience this movie. It's not an experience in the type of maybe Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse was, where it's an action-packed sequence, intensified continuity, as the article says. Rather, it is just you are an observer. You're within this world. The article emphasizes that Cuarón refrains from montage sequences, of skipping time frequently, and changing camera angles to keep the audience engaged. Like I said, that's intensified continuity, and it is the popular style of mass media today. Rather, Cuarón uses long takes with little camera movement to immerse the audience, make them a part of the world. It's as if it is from the perspective of a present observer and not a disembodied camera that floats around at will, like we are really part of it. It works in tandem with the black and white coloring of the film. Cuarón was specific in saying that the movie is colored in such a way because it is meant to be a memory, emphasizing to the viewer that however real and polished it looks, it is still a memory. Even when filming, he, quote, didn't want to have even the notion of color in the process. So, all of these formal elements, from the set design to the visual aesthetic, are made to enforce the frame of the narrative as being a memory. Yes. In a general sense, this allows Cuarón to portray the events as a retrospective of the past, allowing for reflection on what was and thus being able to compare it to what is today, supporting the purpose of consciousness about themes of class and gender struggles. When Cuarón shows something on screen, it is meticulously placed as a recreation of a past reality. So when you hear or don't hear something, it is meant to place you, the viewer, into the past, instead of keeping you as merely as an observer. This ties back to the main purpose of the film, to give the audience a new perspective and awareness of reality that was real and mirrors our own. It is important to consider all of these recurrent formal tactics of the film when inspecting specific narrative elements and analyzing the theme, as we're about to do. Now, one of the biggest aspects of this film that explores this idea and theme of consciousness is the social relationship and dynamic between Cleo and the Cuarón family, which discusses the relationship between higher and lower classes, both in demographic and in economic standpoints, and racial standpoints as well, with Mexico's caste system. So, Cleo, as a character, is a maid for the higher class nuclear Cuarón family, composed of several children alongside the parents. Besides her status as a servant, she is also of more indigenous descent, versus like a Hispanic, somewhat European descent, which historically has been like the higher class. During the film, we get to see how Cleo has a dual relationship with the Cuarón family. There are multiple instances in which we see a deeper connection between Cleo and the family members, especially with the children. Cleo, instead of the mother, Sophia of the family, she is the one to get the children out of bed, the one to prepare them for school, the one who cooks for them. She plays the role of mother as a job, as opposed to a figure or a role. She plays an essential role in the film. The children don't see her as someone who isn't part of the family. They talk to her about what they truly feel. They trust her as well. They see her as part of the family. Well, meanwhile, the mother shows a more conflicting view. In some cases, let's see. Yeah. In some cases, I am lost now. Oh yeah, such as when Cleo reveals to her that she's pregnant, she sits down and comforts her and offers support as if she was a sister. Cleo sheds some tears and the mother comforts her, and it's a rather intimate scene. In contrast, in other locations, the mother speaks very condescendingly to Cleo, reinforcing the idea that she sees Cleo as a servant, not a member of the family. It's this duality that really just drives home the theme of like, there's a difference here, you and I are not the same. Examples of this include when she yells at Cleo for not keeping the oldest son from listening on her conversation with the grandmother about her husband leaving, or when right after the husband has left, uh, where Sophia knows that he's not coming back, she just lashes out at Cleo and says, "Why aren't you cleaning up the dog crap? And go take care of that." Which, in my opinion, is probably one of the most demeaning things that can be done as a servant. Like, go clean up crap. And further emphasizing the ironic disparity of Cleo being part of the family, but also not uh, as such, are her living quarters, which is the next slide. So she lives in a cramped little room with just enough spaces compared to the relatively luxurious home of the Cuarón family. I want to draw your attention to the specific differences. So look at the walls, look at the window, look at what they have, and then think back to what the children had, what the children played with, all their toys, like very decorated. For the 70s, I would say it's emblematic of just how much, money they had. Meanwhile, this is a cramped little room with just enough space. Cleo and her roommate, she has a roommate while the children get separate rooms. They do exercise to keep themselves physically fit for the purpose of being more appealing servants, further emphasizing their objectified role as servants instead of true family members, despite the relationship they have with the children. So while the film does show the Cuarón mother coming to see Cleo as more and more as a real part of the family as she deals with the departure of her husband, these differences between servant and served show the audience a reality between classes and associated demographics. It is easy for the audience to see a movie and dwell on the fact that it is a depiction of the past, but the film is pointing the finger at the modern realities that have been in place since long before the year in which this film was set. Domestic workers, especially women, are treated poorly and unjustifiably so. With the movie being framed as a realistic memory, it forces hindsight on the audience and causes them to think about the present in ways they may not have examined before. So, I want to explore this specific example from my life, actually. Uh, so, yeah. In an academic article in The Conversation, one of the sources provided, domestic labor is common around the world and is widely and unfair and unethically practiced employment. Support the claim, I have an experience from living in India, a country where live-in maids are very common among the higher class. Uh, in my apartment, there was a tiny room downstairs that had the floor space of a closet and a little nook for a small bed. It was unreasonably small, yet it was the place a maid was supposed to live in if we hired one. Now, look closely at these pictures. In the picture on the left, you can see the cardboard box, the corner of the box, and in the picture on the right, you can see the same box. Now, if you put these pieces together in your mind, it's very difficult to take a picture because of how small this room is. You can see, I'm going to say redundantly, you can visualize just how small it is. It's barely big enough for us to even use it as a shoe room. The pictures, I hope, do it enough justice to just demonstrate how kind of like squalid this is and what you don't see as compared to the rest of the apartment. What surprises me most is that in a complex of more than 500 apartments for relatively wealthy people of the country, it was built with the expectation that maids would be hired and expected to live in spaces like this. It is extremely common for residents of the complex to hire maids and for them to live in these tiny rooms, which is an experience that Roma nails right on the head. What I mean by this is that what Roma shows is a present reality, despite being a retrospective of the past. It opens our eyes to potential realities, things that even if we hadn't seen realities like this, like how I have, it makes us think about the possibility of something as such. Roma effectively represents the conditions of people in similar situations to Cleo. The film brings awareness to this unfairness and helps further reform movements that have been in effect since the early 2000s. For example, the UN International Labour Organization launching the Domestic Workers Convention to encourage rights for domestic workers. Roma effectively educates its audience. Yep, right before we move on. Effectively educates them on the perspective of the lower working classes by showing life from their point of view, diligence for survival, and difficulty in how they can be unfairly treated in a socially accepted way, opening the eyes of the audience to be able to empathize more with those they see only on the surface. Now, the woman in Mexico, and by extension, the rest of the world, which is what this movie kind of comments on. Now, the consciousness this film brings the audience is not just in how Cleo is treated by her host family, but also how women in all classes can be victims of their society. One of these inciting incidents in the movie that serves to advance the plot by creating conflict is when Cleo reveals to her boyfriend, Fermin, that she might be pregnant with his child. Emphasis on the might. That's kind of what surprised me. Despite just being engaged in an intimate makeout session, as you can kind of see in this shot, Fermin immediately leaves with no hesitation and abandons Cleo altogether. Cleo exits the theater, and the audience is bombarded by an atmosphere of sellers, street noises, and a crowd. This is the one I described previously in this shot. So this is from the same scene. It's loud, it's an environment, and a very specific one at that. And we will discuss how that kind of ties in with the formal elements. The chaos of the environment serves to show how life goes on, but also emphasizes the precarity of stability for women. In a moment, the quiet theater is replaced by a loud street, just as Cleo's seemingly close relationship with her boyfriend is replaced by solitude and an unborn child. Now, the director uses a specific symbol in this scene to further his point. When Cleo comes to terms with the fact that her boyfriend is not returning, the audience sees in the background a small puppet that a street vendor is demonstrating. If you look closely, you can kind of make it out. Um, like it's that tiny thing underneath the guy that's kneeling in the background. So what we see is the street vendor dances their puppet up and down, announcing, "Look, no strings, no tricks." He's trying to sell the puppet. Then he has the puppet fall down. Boom! Bones is dead. Bones is the puppet. The puppet is a symbol for women like Cleo, in one way we can view it, who are victims of their society. They seem well off and they seem independent, like they have no strings attached, manipulated. However, it is all an illusion, and when the world around women like Cleo falls apart, they seem to have no choice but to accept their fate, dying, in a sense, because they cannot control what happens to them. Cleo cannot control her ex boyfriend, nor stop the child growing within her. She is a victim of her circumstances, yet the world around her moves on. The scene continues to be loud and chaotic, and the vendors keep selling their wares. She is just a single person in her environment. The message of the film becomes increasingly emphasized, or this specific message, I mean, when the mother of the Cuaron family exclaims unsteadily to Cleo later on, "No matter what they say, we women are always alone." By Sophia. So, the article, moving on now, uh, Roma, or the art of making ruins, emphasizes the portrayal of this. Roma embodies the absurd everydayness and everythingness of life. Most of the movie, on a surface level, seems to be mundane. After all, it is supposed to be just the memory of a past time, shot in black and white, and the camera barely moves because we are observers. As this article argues, within the calmness, we see a subtle but normalized turmoil. What occurs in the movie seems normal, a part of life, but in truth, what the audience sees is anything but. In what world is leaving one's girlfriend or wife for frivolous reasons accepted? But as Roma shows, such a reality can be criticized, even though it is the one we had then and continue, perhaps, to have today, especially in Latin America, where this film is based off of. Roma consistently furthers the theme that women have been and often are the victims of issues in many societies. And this awakens people, the audience, to this reality by showing that this was a reality in the past. And when you see something, when you think about something, regardless of when it was, you tend to think about it in your present day. I mean, why do men think about Spartacus? It's like, oh my gosh, Spartacus, so cool. I want to be like Spartacus. I'm going to go to the gym. Uh, I'm distracted, sorry. But my point is, it subsequently causes the audience to think about the possibility of it in the modern day, if not recognize it for what it is. Now, let's move on a bit to how Roma is interpreted. Uh, the film has been lauded as feminist for its message of women finding self actualization and the throwing off of gender and class norms. One critical analysis of the film observes that while the mother of the Cuaron family truly gets to emancipate herself and become more independent, that's a vocabulary from the article, by the way, Cleo herself is still relegated to the role of the domestic servant. It's feminist, but she still ends up doing the laundry in the end. Throughout the movie, Cleo is portrayed as a victim of her circumstances, yet able to patiently endure it with silent persistence. She passes through the events of this film, and in the end, though, is not changed as a character. The article observes that you would think that a movie that's feminist, that wants to portray strong women conquering their life, would end with all of them being, strong, changed, that they've developed because they've overcome the societal trauma that they passed through. In contrast to Cleo, the mother does evolve. She moves beyond her husband's infidelity, and she learns to accept it and become independent. Focus on the independent. She changes over the course of the film, a change that is made possible in part because she is Cleo, who experiences the same infidelity to support her. I think it's key that they both experience it, yet one of them has to overcome it and stomach it, in a sense, and finds balance in her life, which is Cleo, while the other one overcomes it but still has a crutch, which is the other person, Cleo, who is dealing with the same thing. Now, if we walk away from the movie thinking that woman can throw off the shackles of society, we have missed the idea that Cleo did not escape anything. She is still a household servant, which, as the article observes, is kind of a conflicting message for the modern ideologies of feminism. It says that the film fails to realistically deliver. However, I argue that the film is valuable for the same reasons the article criticizes it. The film is framed as a depiction of reality, a past one that is certainly present in the modern day, and this situation is one that will continue to exist. Now, perhaps the duality of woman in this movie being strong and only one truly self actualizing at the expense of the other is an undermining of the major theme of woman breaking free of society. But is that not the case in our world? Roma is unique in that it doesn't portray an idealistic ending, it portrays the realistic one that can be observed and learned from, seeing that in parts of the world where mostly female domestic servitude is still common, all women must receive opportunity and solidarity, not one at the expense of perpetuating the system against other women. The film is about seeing the past and comparing it to our present. Not an idealized past, not a changed or shaped past. It's the past that truly was, and remembering it and knowing what to do now. That's specifically why it's shot the way it is. The immersive experience, the black and white, but still very defined quality. It's about us seeing what truly was and what is the past, being able to think about it and move beyond it. Overall, it's a film grounded in reality. Yeah, it's about comparing the past with our present. So, our key takeaways: it's a film grounded in reality. It doesn't break the mold and it doesn't try to be fantastical. Its message is one of consciousness by portraying a past reality to mirror the one of this modern world in many diverse areas and cultures. Cuaron effectively raises awareness of class difference and experiences, as well as the history of women's roles in society, through the exploration of his personal history, with a focus on themes of the difficulties and differences women in his life experienced. Now, thank you for listening. It was a pleasure. I know it's 3 a.m., but I really did put effort in. Um, anyways, hope that was enjoyable. Have a great day.